Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the Mint Mob Podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex across the pond in Germany. We're going to do the usual, where we dive into what's happening in GoodFellas toward the end of the hour. But before we do, let's touch base with Alex and jump into a few topics at the top of the show. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey man, I'm doing really good. How about you? It's actually interesting that that we speak for the first time. We haven't even spoken, even not like during our meeting we had a second ago, about the World Cup finals, man. Like we had a World Cup drop. Now we are going to have a bonus piece. Did you watch the final?
Of course. I watched I watched the third place game and the final. How about you?
I watched actually neither of those. I haven't even watched the final, to be honest.
Really? That's surprising. What was going on?
Yeah, I was attending a concert yesterday, and on Saturday I was attending a wedding, so I didn't really have time, unfortunately. But I watched the final minutes of yesterday's game, which was probably the most interesting ones, and I watched the I watched all the goals from the England versus France match, which was a really great match. That was actually really entertaining. I'm actually a little sad I missed that, but unfortunately wasn't able to watch them both live. But the World Cup is coming to an end. I think Maria and Lucia from our communities have had a really, really great time yesterday. Spain won its second World Cup title, and but the game, let's be honest, like it wasn't that much fun, right?
Well, first of all, let's address the elephant in the room. Concert? You went to a concert. Did you finally get to see Britney Spears? Or was it the Backstreet Boys?
Worse, even worse.
Justin Bieber. You went to see Justin Bieber?
Well, I gotta say, I kind of got dragged into it. I said yes about a year ago, and there was no backing out of after that. Pitbull. Do you know Pitbull? Is he big in the United States?
He's not big in my world, but apparently he's big in some circles, yes.
You know what's funny? Like when I went there, I never listened to his music like in my life, like privately. You know, when I'm in my car, I never turn on his music. But when I went there and when I listened to his songs, you know every single song. It's crazy. Like it's all hits. Like you've all of those songs you've heard somewhere. Like whether it's in like when you were like I don't know in a club when you were younger. I think he had his big time like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and everything is like club music, a little Spanish, and I was like I was really surprised. Like I knew every song, and it was like quite a good vibe. I'm not the biggest fan of going into these kind of crowds. I think it were like 35,000 people, and still I enjoyed it. I was kind of even surprised that I liked it, but I know it's not everyone's music. Probably not yours.
No, for sure. He's been super successful. I'm just, kind of playing with you a little bit. But I think the thing that's more impressive to me about him is his business savvy. He's known to be a really good businessman, and he's one of the few who's taken his winnings from the music industry and done a lot in the business world. So I think from that perspective, I have a lot of respect for him for sure. But I'm not a big club music guy, but obviously a lot of his stuff is super successful and really upbeat. So I can totally see having a good time there, brother. Cool. So whose idea was this? Was this wifey's idea or what?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, she asked me like a year ago, and I was like, I can't say no to everything, so I'm just saying yes here. And I was like,
I can't say no to everything.
So and then like 2 weeks ago, she was like, "Do you remember? Like we are on like a Pitbull concert in 2 weeks." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's already like time has flown away." Like it was good. It was fun. A lot of people had a lot of fun, and everyone was wearing these like bald hats. Like I don't know what's like the right term here, but they all putting over like a what's like the right term here in English? I don't even know. When you're going bald, or when you are bald, like is bald the right term here?
Bald, means no hair, but I'm not sure what you're trying to describe.
Yeah, they all have those. It's almost like as if you cut a balloon and then you just put it on your head so it looks like you're bald. And they all want to imitate Pitbull, of course, right? And then they wear glasses and a tie and a suit. That's like that seems to be a thing on Pitbull concerts, that everyone is kind of
Oh,
dressing like him.
I see.
And
I
yeah,
got you.
that's
So
pretty
yeah,
funny,
so like a
you know.
bald cap.
Yeah, bald cap, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, now people are like, or my wifey is like, all right, Justin Bieber is next, and I'm like, let's see about that. I'll give you a maybe.
That's hilarious. Cool, man. I'm glad you had fun. Yeah, both. To your point, yeah, the game for third place was a lot of fun. Obviously, 10 goals. Never, you almost never see
Yeah.
that in a world-class soccer match. But obviously, with really not much on the line, I think third place. I mean, it seemed like the teams were going pretty heavily on the offense and not pretty. I think that's indicative of what soccer could be. But yeah, the final game was a lot slower. Still some excitement because you had a lot of chances from Spain, and Spain had a lot of shots on goal, whereas Argentina not so much. But yeah, it was cool. It was great. It was definitely watched them both, and it was fun to see Spain come away with the win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I turned on the game, what was like around minute 80 or something, and there was like a statistics shown that Spain had something like 16 attempts, like shots on the goal, while Argentina still had 0, which was quite surprising. But yeah, the better team won. That's what counts, right? Like in the end, I didn't want to see a penalty shootout and then Argentina make it, luckily. So I'm happy that Spain managed to score that one goal. And yeah, they made it. I'm happy for all the Spanish people I know. It's been a really big thing. But what about the halftime show? Was it like comparable to the Super Bowl halftime show? I haven't seen it, unfortunately.
I doubt very seriously that it was. I didn't watch it. I flipped it over to pickleball. So
Okay.
So I was hanging with the wifey, and we were doing some stuff around the house. So when the halftime came, we flipped it over to pickleball and grabbed something to eat, and then came back once the second half kicked up.
That was probably the better choice. But yeah, the World Cup is coming to an end. As I mentioned, we got another piece coming up from Maria that will be a bonus drop.
Yep.
So definitely keep an eye out for that. And yeah, today's topic is actually one I've been looking forward to discussing because I genuinely think it's one of the biggest moments we've seen for a native Web3 project. Claynosaurz is now on Amazon Prime Video. We haven't spoken about that yet. And when I first saw the announcement, I thought, wow, this is actually happening. For years, we've heard NFT founders talk about, building the next big thing, but very few have actually taken meaningful steps toward becoming like an entertainment brand. And Claynosaurz seems to be doing exactly that. So yeah, before we get into what this means for holders, like how big of a milestone do you think this really is?
It's huge, man. It's it's huge for a lot of reasons. Not so much for NFTs or floor prices or the rest of it. I think the only thing it really is going to do there is sort of bolster the idea that NFTs can break through as like a viable pathway for IP. But I mean, the truth is, like, what they did with Amazon has nothing to do with NFTs. The NFTs was just sort of a way for them to distribute content in a way that they could own the digitals. So it was really interesting to see. And I listened to a couple interviews where they were talking about how they were going about doing this, and basically they separated the business end. The negotiations that they were doing with Amazon Prime was basically separate from all of the language and lingo around NFTs. Excuse me. So I think that this is the smart way to do it because Amazon doesn't give a shit about NFTs or blockchain or any of the rest of it. All they care about is, can you get someone's attention? And, the way that they structured this business by basically separating this media arm from what they're doing on the NFT side was exactly the way I would have done it. Super smart. And, coming from their background, I think they've got like a series of animators, or at least connections to animators who came out of, houses like Pixar, for example. So they had a few connections going in, but they knew a little bit about the market and how it was structured and how they should present this. And they did a really good job of negotiating. And I mean, I think you saw on the timeline, or I hope people saw on this timeline, where it took like 4+ years just to negotiate this one deal, right? 4+ years, right? This is how quote unquote fast things happen in the real world, right? So when people get all frustrated after 2 weeks and then they start, dumping you and selling your shit, like, you got to realize you're not dealing with people who live in reality. So I think this was a fantastic lesson, but also a fantastic sort of exposure for what, the weaknesses are in the NFT market, as well as some of the strengths.
Can we just quickly break down what's available right now for like the viewers? Because unfortunately, it's not available in Europe yet. But I think you mentioned in the meeting that there are basically like 3 1-minute episodes or something. Like, so it's not too much yet, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So basically, in the world of television, where you have episodic television, what a studio would typically do is you would go in and you would pitch them your idea, and if they bought it, they would order a pilot. And so you would shoot the first episode. That's normally your pilot, and they would invest whatever funds need to be invested to get the pilot produced and on air. And then they would air it, and based on the reception or based on how it went, they would then decide to buy more episodes from you. So you have to realize, like, the studio is basically the consumer in this scenario, and you're providing a product to them that they can then turn around and sell to advertisers, is basically how it works. And so what they've done with Claynosaurz, or what Claynosaurz did, was they were able to negotiate a deal where they didn't do anything full length yet. They did a few small, 1 minute, 2 minute snippets from what the show could be, like if they did a whole episode. And so if you go through and you pick up some of the stuff on Amazon Prime or Apple TV or wherever, you're not going to see 30 minutes of content or a 30-minute episode. You're just going to see, a minute and a half, whatever it was. I can't remember. And then if that goes well, they'll continue to build larger and longer story into the IP. And that's basically how that works.
One thing I've been thinking about, obviously observing the timeline while I was, reading all the news about Claynosaurz, is that people immediately associate this with being bullish for NFTs. And that's obviously not the same thing, because to me, there's a difference between saying Claynosaurz as a company, as you just mentioned, right? Like when they went into negotiations with Amazon, there isn't, nobody speaking about NFTs. So why do you think people are mixing those two ideas together? Because let's imagine for a second that this show absolutely explodes. Let's say millions of people watch it. Kids love the characters. There's merchandise, maybe eventually games, maybe movies. The brand becomes massive. My question is, why would someone watching the show suddenly decide they need to own a Solana NFT, right? So is there any advantage for NFT holders at all?
Yeah, of course there is. I mean, in their ecosystem, I believe they've allocated 15% of revenues to the community. Excuse me. Which is a very small percentage. But again, like, they have a pretty large team. When you look at their team, I mean, you're talking about, 10 or 12 people who come from production, many of whom come from, like I said, Pixar, I think DreamWorks, Sony, Disney, Ubisoft, like all of the major production houses. They have some connection or people from them, and those people have to get paid, right? So basically what they did was they did a raise using NFTs to sort of get the IP off the ground. And one of the smart things that they did was they didn't waste time on Crypto X talking about this is what we're doing. They went into Web 2 and they started posting their shorts on like Instagram and these types of places. And they built a fairly large following on traditional like Web 2 platforms. And then basically they were able to leverage that audience and get the deal with Prime through a bunch of relationships and proof of concept of the fact that the IP was being consumed by people. That's all the studio cares about. And so from an NFT perspective, this has always been the play. Like if you go all the way back to the 80s, where we're talking about like the golden era of collecting, like modern toys would have been like that G.I. Joe, early G.I. Joe, Star Wars, He-Man type era. And all they did was back in the day was they created a story and then they sold the characters, and the job of the story was to keep the characters relevant in the mind of the buyer. So once you have a character that you have an affinity towards, you want to own it. You want to have some, recollection of it in your home or in your space. And by doing so, it sort of evokes that nostalgic feeling of watching the show with friends, or, having a quiet night at home, or the way that it makes you feel when you look at it evokes imagery from that experience that you had with the IP. So it all ties together. And so as an NFT, it might be that collectors come in, or consumers, I won't even call them collectors, maybe they're consumers who come in and they want to say, I want to own this particular stuffy, or I want to own this particular shirt or hat or whatever, but I also want to own the NFT, right? And owning the NFT will come with a different set of perks. So again, it all circles back and folds back on itself. And again, this is what we're building with GoodFellas, at the same time, right? Like, everything needs to circle back and reinforce the fact that your IP is something that evokes a certain series of emotions and feelings in a person. And that's done through story, that's done through exposure to merchandise, that's done through like shorts, like you and I were talking about in the meeting, like storytelling and what that's about to start looking like. All of these things help reinforce the idea that, someone might want to own a snippet or a piece or a part of what it is that you're doing. And it's, in the modern era, like the Star Wars movies, G.I. Joe movies, I think we just recently had a new He-Man movie. The new Superman movie was absolutely horrible. Supergirl was even worse. When people have a good experience with the story, though, they want to bring those characters home, and they can start doing it now digitally. So that's basically the impact that you'll see on NFTs. It doesn't necessarily mean the floor price is going to shoot through the roof, right? Because those two things could potentially be untied. But in a collector's world where you see many, many people decide, oh, you know what, I want to own this in its digital form, that's when you can see like floor prices start to be driven up, and transaction volumes start to be driven up. Of course, it happened in Web3 on CryptoX when the announcement came out, because every DGen and their brother wanted to suddenly own a Claynosaurz Solana NFT, right? But that's not necessarily going to be the norm, or would it ever be the norm, right? So you have to realize that these are separate markets, and where they overlap would be where the transaction volume came into NFTs. So again, we're left with the idea of onboarding normies, and I think that Claynosaurz has done like more to bolster the market than any project in Web3 at present, just simply because they were able to get in front of a Web2 audience, which is extremely important, something that you and I have talked about, and we need to obviously allocate more time and energy towards. And we started dipping a toe, like, you started setting up a TikTok account and all this other kind of stuff. But, to do these things well requires manpower and time. And the last thing that you want to do is like start something and quit it, or start something and not be able to be consistent with it. So, everything starts when you're small, everything starts with a small base, and you have to radiate out as funds become available. This is why free projects will never succeed, because you actually have to get paid. You have to pay good people for their time, or you have to invest heavily in what it is that you're doing. And, ultimately over time that can pay you back. But it's going to take, for the small project, it's going to take time to build that in. It's going to take time to get traction. It's going to take time to develop those channels. Claynosaurz had the advantage of having a large influx of money come in, so that they were able to start that immediately. And even with that, it took them 4 years. So I think, or 4 years to get to this one deal. Now, what they've got going on outside of that could take even more. But again, you want to think in decades, not days. So for the NFT collector, I think it's basically like a reminder that, hey, this is possible. It's like everybody wants to know what's possible. Is this ever going to happen? And then, of course, with all the ETH snobbery that we've seen, it's a Solana project that breaks through, which is really kind of funny, because Solana has taken over the financial market, clearly taken over the financial market. Now, can they break through with art? Big uphill battle. Can they break through with IP? Maybe it's not such an uphill battle, depending on what teams are doing and how they're building. So, it upsets the apple cart in a lot of different ways, and proves the concept in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, this has been years of consistently investing in animation, storytelling, branding, and we've pointed out many times that this is something that a lot of NFT projects underestimate, and it's incredibly difficult to build IP that people genuinely care about. But what I love about the Claynosaurz is that they actually do care so much for their NFT holders and their NFT infrastructure still. Like when you jump into their Discord, you see that they have had very frequent announcements. They've kept people in the loop. They did a lot for their holders. They definitely pay attention to that part of their project as well. And something else I've been thinking about is whether they are, actually building for today's market or even for the market in 5 or even 10 years from now. Because if digital ownership becomes completely normal, and honestly, or probably we think that eventually will happen, then maybe what they're building today starts making a lot more sense years down the line. So do you think they're simply ahead of the curve right now?
I think they're just professional. I mean, it really just comes down to being professional. Like you have a group of people who come from the world of animation. They drop 3D characters and basically 4 or 5 years ago, wherever it was, 21, 22, they dropped the characters and everyone's like, what is this? And, come to find out it's a bunch of animators from, top houses, top production houses who had a vision for creating story, right? That's what it was. And so I don't know that it's anything other than that, right? And then being committed to that vision for a long period of time. So, I mean, that's just how I see it. What do you see?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I just wonder whether this is going to be like a case study for every NFT founder now, right? Because regardless of whether you're building on Solana, Ethereum, or Bitcoin, everyone is watching this right now. And if Clay succeeds, people will probably try to copy that blueprint. If they struggle, people will also learn from that. So, it's actually so interesting. And as you said, it's really surprising that this comes from Solana. I'm so happy that they do all this on Solana because they've probably realized that this is a chain that's going to exist in the future. But until now, whenever we heard things about Web2 adoption and Pudgy Penguins in Walmart, or Yuga Labs is doing real life things with their IP, it was always like on Ethereum, and now we have such a big thing happening on Solana, and it almost makes me proud, even though I'm not affiliated to Claynosaurz at all. But I'm really happy with their success, and I'm very happy that we still have founders like them on chain and representing Solana. That's really good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the interesting thing between, like you mentioned, Pudgy Penguins, and you can pick any like major like ETH project, whether it's I don't know, like pick your favorite one. Doesn't really matter. But a lot of those projects came from fame. A lot of them just came from famous people or were bolstered by famous people. And so you can see like the effect that hype has on floor prices and the effect it has on business. Like it has almost zero effect on business if you don't actually capitalize on it. So like Pudgy Penguins, for example, and the Claynosaurz founders made a point of this in one of their interviews. They were talking about the budgets. Like the budgets that Pudgy had were absolutely astronomical, like huge budgets. Something like, I think 10 or 20 or 30 times what Claynosaurz had. And yeah, they got their plushies in Walmart, but who gives a shit? So like if if at the end of the day, that's the only thing you accomplish, you sold some merchandise, but did you really touch someone in a place that's emotional enough for them to want to continue to buy plushies? Probably not. Like you're going to have to tell the story. You're going to have something that people attach themselves to. And, this is where the idea of quote unquote lore, like if you remember back in the early days of NFTs, like every project had lore and you'd read it and it was like 2 paragraphs of bullshit that made no sense and was horribly written, usually not by an English speaker. And so it didn't even make sense grammatically. And so like those days, it's not going to happen. I think really what's happening is Claynosaurz is not reinventing anything. I think they're just rerunning the playbook from the 80s, which is, if you have a product that you want to sell, you need to reinforce what that product is with the story. And in the 80s, that was cartoons. And then in the 90s and 2000s, it became movies, right? And all of that was used to sell action figures, T-shirts, merchandise, whatever, right? Like the action figure market is incredibly huge. Like the collectibles market for cards, incredibly huge. I mean, I think I stopped collecting for a long time. I think it was 2011 or 2012 when I started collecting comics and figures again. And just in the time since 2011, like a 6-inch action figure went from being like $18 to now it's $29 or $30, right? Just in that time period. And of course, you're making a lot of noise with your keyboard. Just FYI, I can hear every keystroke, and it's getting recorded. Just in that time period, prices have more than doubled in a lot of areas, and prices of merch have more than doubled, and in some places tripled. So you can see like the nostalgia really matters, and the story that people attach themselves to really matters. And so I think that Claynosaurz is exercising basically, that playbook that was introduced then and has been refined since with like a lot of the superhero movies and such.
Yeah, that's true, and that still kind of brings me to the question whether, like, if you look at them as a simple NFT project, right? Like the way they minted back then, I think they minted out really quick. I think their revenue was like around $1 million back then. But did you have the feeling that, I mean, looking at the art, like, was it primarily the art, or was it like the community? Did you feel like Claynosaurz community was extraordinarily strong, especially, representing it on X? Recently, before the news about Prime Video, about the show, I haven't really seen much. So the question is, did the mint simply provide the financial kickstart they needed to build everything that followed? Or because looking back, I think it would be too easy to say, like, I don't know, they created great art, built a great community, and success naturally followed, right? So I'm not too familiar with the team. Like you mentioned, they had experience in animation and all that stuff. They're coming from, you mentioned, or at least connections to Pixar people or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Their animators came from these large production houses. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they already had that connection, but did you have the impression that Claynosaurz was really big, at least like inside the NFT space in people's perception? Because I didn't hear anything from them before they made that big move. I remember that they had that big mint back then. I remember looking at the animated dinosaurs, and that people really hyped the collection back then, and it felt like it's just another, like pump and dump scheme. They never fell off as much as many other projects did, but I didn't have the feeling that, they had people representing the pieces as much as, for example, the Mad Lads did, or the EGOTs did. So how important was having the community for Claynosaurz?
I mean, you see right now how important the quote-unquote community is. The community didn't negotiate the deals. The community didn't do anything other than just hold the pieces if they were smart, right? Same thing with like pick Bored Apes, Azuki, like any of the, big projects that are the projects that have been hyped over time. Hype does not close deals. It doesn't close deals.
Yeah.
And so, if you're holding Claynosaurz, like if you go to Instagram and you pull up Claynosaurz, you'll see that they've got over 420,000 followers, right? They didn't build this on X, and they've got 300 and let's see, let me just look at their actual numbers. Right now, they've got 334 posts, and all of these posts, for the most part, are animated versions of the characters, like what they posted for the NFTs, right? And so they were basically telegraphing what they were building this entire time and telling the story to anyone who was interested in listening. So what the NFT market had become around the time that they launched was a place for pump and dump schemes where you could go and you could declare, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and then not do it and run off and buy a Lamborghini and disappear, right? And what Claynosaurz did was they leveraged that to sell their initial pieces to get a raise. and they leveraged their relationships and job skills from that era to get people to take notice so that they could sell out the collection. And then they actually used that to start building. And so for the last 4 or 5 years, they started building actual work, delivering actual work. And it was never about hype. It was about them doing the work. And this is why we didn't see a whole lot of, Claynosaurz stuff on the timeline, because they were busy actually doing deals. And this is the thing that is so frustrating with founders, right? Like they spend 4 hours on a space or 2 hours on a space, and it's like, okay, you're 2 hours on a space, you've got your little chain post, your little retweet thing going, but what are you actually doing behind the scenes? Are you reaching out to people? Are you trying to close a deal? You know what I mean? Like, what is it? What are you doing? I feel like I'm the only one here going, like, who would send Elon Musk's email to every single founder, from when he took over Twitter. Is like, what did you get done this week? Right?
I feel like what's making it even more impressive is that, when we look back at the biggest NFT collections, whether it's Bored Apes, Pudgies, Azuki, DeGods, whatever, one thing they all had in common was that people actually wanted to wear them. Your NFT became your identity on X. And if you had one as your PFP, people immediately knew what community you belonged to. That visibility created free marketing. Every holder basically became like a walking advertisement. And now compare that to Claynosaurz. I honestly can't remember a time when Claynosaurz dominated Twitter PFPs in the same way. I think they never did, because they're obviously animated. You had these dinosaurs and they weren't really PFP-ish. So do you think that was intentional? It almost feels like they didn't even want that advertisement. Like they like using these kind of, animated dinosaurs makes sense, with the brand they built. But in the end, it looks like the whole project was never built to be, or to exist inside the Twitter PFP NFT space, right? Like, it's interesting, and yet they managed to have so many holders, believing in the vision, and who kept the NFT, and those guys are being rewarded now. But it has never been a PFP project. They never had that kind of advertisement, and it looks like they didn't care, right?
Why would you? Again, if it's kind of like the meeting we had on Friday. Like we were talking about some things. There were some frustrations we were going through, and the truth is, like, if you're on a journey and you have focus on what you want to create, right? The thing that it's really easy to forget, there's this saying that we have here that basically comes down to, like, if you're walking down the sidewalk, if you're going to the store, well, if you stop to throw rocks at every dog that barks at you along the way, you're never going to get there. And that's kind of the way the NFT market is, right? Like, everybody wants to stop and, like, break focus and deal with this little bullshit thing over here, or that little bullshit thing over there. And if all you do is, show up on spaces and sit there for 4 hours whining and moaning, then you can't be behind the scenes working and delivering unless you're paying people to do that work. And so many people don't have the budgets to do that, right? So that's why, like, every dollar that we pull in from, or every token that we pull in from a sale is reserved for, building the project. No one is taking funds from the project. We're actually rebuilding the project and continuing to grow it in that manner. And I think that's all Claynosaurz did. It's like, we have a singular focus. The funds that we took in go back into the project. We're gonna scrape by on whatever we can pay ourselves, because again, like, their team is like 12 or 15 deep, right? So even if they, whatever raise they raised, that money was gone in the first year, right? So, like, at the end of the day, they weren't making a whole lot of money, if anything at all. They probably invested more. So, that's just what it takes when you're trying to bootstrap something and get it off the ground. Maybe they had some advantages with connections, but that's what everyone should do. Like, you should leverage your connections and stay focused on what it is that you're creating, right? So, at the end of the day, whether it was intentional or not, I think is pretty clear that what they did was intentional. A group of animators from top animation houses came together. They dropped an animated NFT project. They've been posting on Instagram for 4 years what they're doing. They've posted to their community. They've given equity to their community. They have basically telegraphed every single thing that they were going to do, and then they've done it. And that's really what's been missing for so many years, right? And as much as I would love to sit around and chat with, 100 people on a space every day because it's fun and it's enjoyable, I would literally never get anything done if that was what I did. It's a better use of my time and a better use of service to the people is for me to, do what we were talking about off mic, which was, negotiating with creators, right? I'm negotiating with creators to get story out, right? That's one of the things that I'm working on, and no one's going to see that. So, again, when people are presenting their idea and they're asking for investment, right? Like, you're buying the team initially. That's what you're buying. You're buying their ability to execute. So you're looking at their track record and saying, okay, well, this is their intent, this is their focus. And all I'm looking for from an investment standpoint is, are they deviating from that focus, right? So just like with GoodFellas, we don't deviate from serving collectors, building tools for collectors, finding quality artwork and releasing it. We don't deviate from that, and story will come from that, and everything else that we're building will come from that. And again, if we stopped to throw rocks at every dog that barked along the way, we would never get there. So, I think it's really, really clear that they stayed focused, and I want to just, send them all the flowers and congratulations for what they've created, because again, they were the first to kind of break through in this arena, and they deserve all the credit for being focused. So yeah, 100% intentional is my vote.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, given that all the people passing flowers over to the team, I mean, it's absolutely deserves. But on the other hand, the real work starts now, right? Like, because getting on Amazon Prime is a huge achievement, but in the end, now they're competing with so many, with so many, whether it's TV shows or cartoons outside the NFT bubble, right? And now it's about the content they deliver. It's about the brand they have. I mean, just being on Amazon Prime doesn't mean anything, right? There's so much stuff on Amazon Prime that nobody watches. I mean, you look at big shows, right? Like, they get cut off after a season or two, and then nobody speaks about it anymore. So it feels like people in Web3 are already treating the Prime release like the victory itself, when it may really only be the beginning of the test, right?
And this is always true. So I want to be very careful about saying that it doesn't mean anything, because it does mean something. It means that a deal was closed and that they have an opportunity to create, right? But again, like, I think the point that you're trying to make is that, once you achieve a certain level of success and you've gone through that gate, that's just the beginning to get to the next gate, and to get to the next gate, and to get to the next gate, right? And all of this is about proving the concept along the way. So it absolutely matters. It absolutely matters that every project is producing something that actually serves people. And when you look at, the truth is, like, if Claynosaurz wanted to, they could launch on YouTube, right? They don't have to go through Prime. They don't have to deal with the headaches of dealing with big movie houses. And they would probably make just as much in terms of views. Because again, like, no matter what happens with the NFTs, no matter what happens with the show, they're probably still going to continue to put out Web2 content and monetize it that way. And so if they wanted to, they could go that route. And so I think that at the end of the day, when you structure yourself correctly, one of the things that you build in multiple ways to win. And one of the common threads in listening to their interviews is that they understood that, right? They understood that they need to create multiple ways to win, and that they needed to show proof of concept to anyone who wanted to buy into them, meaning studios. So when they can take, 1 million followers to a studio, where maybe a show on Amazon gets, 100,000 views per episode or something, if you can show that you've got, at least the same level of interest, if not more, then you can sell that to advertisers, which is what the studio cares about, and you can monetize the views that way, or sell more subscriptions to your streaming service, whatever the case may be, right? So what they've done that I think is brilliant is they got off of X. They didn't waste time on 8-hour spaces. They built their IP on Web2 and developed a following. They then separated the business of attention from the business of NFTs. And they took the business of attention to a studio and negotiated a deal. And no one has done that. And that is absolutely a a specific plan that works, proven, proof positive, no question about it, right? And there's other projects doing great things too, but at the end of the day, getting into the real world where people who don't necessarily care about NFTs can be entertained or can enjoy something from you, I think is paramount.
Yeah. But I feel like, imagine this: the next headline reads, "Claynosaurz not renewed. The series has been canceled after just one season." That would like send shockwaves through the NFT space, and it would almost certainly be perceived as a major setback, and the entire narrative would flip overnight. And that could like people would probably treat it as a proof that the experiment failed. And it's so crazy, right? Like I feel like being in their shoes right now, it's such a big opportunity, but the bigger you become, the harder it gets to some degree, right? And it's actually so interesting. I'm so excited to see what they do in the future, and definitely try to find out a little bit more about the team and how they set up the deal with Amazon. You mentioned that they did the separation from the NFT market, and did it like with their brand. Like where did you get those information? Is it like public somewhere? Because I'd love to read into that as well.
You can just go back and listen to any of the spaces or interviews that they've done. They talk about it.
Yeah.
They talk about it at length. So yeah, really easy to get that information, as well as the backgrounds on the team. I mean, you could probably just grok the backgrounds of the team. You can see that. And yeah, of course, everybody and their brother has been asking them to come onto a space or do an interview. So all of that information is there. But again, like the key themes are, we didn't sell NFTs to the studio. We sold, the idea behind the IP, and the fact that we could serve like a value proposition, right? What's your value proposition? Well, I can get eyeballs to your streaming platform. That's the proposition right there. Simple as that. Here's our Instagram following, here's our TikTok following, whatever. We've got this many views, we've got this many people, blah, blah, blah. And, people really like it. So we think this is a good idea and could be a good thing. Let's test it. And that's where we're at right now. We're in the testing phase. So they may not get picked up for full episodes. Like you said, very German of you to stay to the negative side of things. But they may not get picked up, and that's a reality. But you cannot deny that they closed the deal to begin with. And that's where we're at. That's the stage that we're at right now.
Yeah.
So that part of the concept has been proved. The Web 2 side of it, which is more interesting to me, has been proved. Because honestly, when you look at some of the content on Amazon Prime, like a lot of it is, a lot of the stuff I get shown because I'm kind of into Jeeps and cars and stuff like that is like, XYZ garage or so-and-so's garage. And it was probably a YouTube show that got converted to a television show because of the sheer number of views that they were getting on like a Web 2 platform like YouTube or whatever, right? So, I mean, it's not that it's impossible to get there, but negotiating the deal proves the concept of the team actually trying to do something with the IP. And that's really what I'm concerned with as an investor, right? That's all I care about. I'm not a collector. In Claynosaurz, I would be an investor. And, likewise with people who are, like you saw the floor price again, when the news came out, it jumped up into the 20s, 20 plus SOL or whatever, like 24, 26, 28 SOL, whatever it was. And it dropped back down into the teens, so like, again, like the hype cycle reveals the hype cycle rears its ugly head, right? And the hype cycle comes and goes, and everybody who buys at the top gets fucked, and the people who are smart enough to wait, can actually sit on some IP and maybe make some money in the end of the day. But that type of stuff draws in the degens, and that's all we've really had on CryptoX. And this is the fight we keep fighting with GoodFellas, looking for collectors, not degens. I think Claynosaurz has been the first project to really break through and execute that, predominantly using Web 2 to bolster Web 3. And that's been a huge reversal.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like when you mentioned that they kind of separated their real business with and didn't really mention NFTs when they did the deal with Amazon. I mean, they probably deliberately avoided mentioning the NFTs because of the negative stigma that's still associated with it, right?
Yeah, who knows? I wasn't there, but I mean, I can't imagine it would have helped them. You know, in a negotiation, you don't necessarily highlight the things that are going to harm your case, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're in the
Well,
Web3 where everybody's been screwed and rugged 5 times over and still can't learn their lesson and not to buy from anonymous dickheads, and then wonder why their wallet got drained, you know, or something like that. It's amazing.
yeah.
You guys should put us on TV. You know, I can't imagine that was the sales pitch. You know.
Yeah, nobody from Amazon knows about NFTs, and these guys just jump in and are like, you know, you remember NFTs, like the monkeys. You remember the monkeys? Everyone had them. Like, I don't know, man. It's crazy. I mean, I love the way they did it. I'll definitely dive a little deeper into the history of it, and it's really cool. Definitely worth keeping an eye out on what these guys do. And now let's take a little time to jump into what we are doing. And we've mentioned that there's going to be a bonus drop coming from the Spanish Queen Maria for the World Cup victory of Spain. So keep an eye out for that. And then we will have an alien, the first ever alien, join our great art gallery that we've built over. Like do you remember when we started the artist incubator with Maria back then? Do you remember like what time it was? Like, was it like in 2024? Like I was doing a post today and I was like thinking about it, and I'm not sure like when exactly it was. Like, do you have that in your mind?
I'd have to go back and look. I mean, look at the mint dates on like those
Yeah.
original NFTs. Yeah, I really don't know. I'd have to go back
Yeah,
and
because
look.
I think last time you said that it's like number 64 or something, right? Like the 64th drop or something.
68.
Oh,
Technically the
68 already. Crazy.
69th because we started counting with 0. So technically we've had 69 AI drops. So Maria's bonus piece will be the 70th. And then,
70th?
Yep. And then the alien will be the 71st. So yeah, absolutely. And then
Yeah,
of course
really
next,
cool.
yeah. And then next month, I think I forget what day, the 23rd or the 25th would be our project anniversary.
Yeah, really cool. And Daniel is actually someone I've been looking forward to for quite some time. You settled the deal with him, and yeah, he's a really cool guy. I think he is actually the one I've seen on my timeline. I actually see him on my timeline all the time, every day, because I see all these aliens around. I see Mark share a lot of the blogs with the aliens. I know that many of the collectors we are connected to are collecting those aliens as well. And yeah, I really love the piece that Dan created for the art gallery. It's a little gangster alien, and yeah, love to bring it into the gallery. Excited to hear people's opinion on that particular piece. And yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, it's the alien art is so unique again and so distinctive that it really like expands the great variety of different art styles we have inside the gallery. So can't wait for that. I think like we have tried to get Dan on Spaces. Unfortunately, it's a time issue for him. His wife is sick and he has children, so it's not easy for him. But we will at least have an interview with him and speak a little bit about the creation and the history of the alien body buds, where he wants to head in the future. And yeah, it's going to be really exciting. A great artist incubator drop. And you settled that deal with him. Did you feel like is Dan as easy to work with as I feel like? Because he's really like, when I reach out to him, I get an answer within like 10 minutes. It's crazy. Like was he as easy to work with you as well?
Yeah, I thought he was really easy to work with, very timely in his delivery. And, these are things obviously that when you're running a professional platform, you really expect from your artists, and it's rare, to be quite honest with you. So super easy to work with, takes feedback well, hard worker, all the things you want in a partner. he represents. And so I'm super happy that we were able to negotiate a deal and get him in here and, get him inside the AI. It's going to be a fantastic drop. Of course, I've gotten to see the piece, and we went back and forth a little bit on it. But ultimately, it's 100% Dan. If you've seen his work, it's going to be exactly his work, and you're not going to be disappointed in any way, shape, or form.
Yep, absolutely. And he was really cooperative. He was immediately asking when the drop is going to happen. He wants to promote it. He'll create a little sneak peek. I'm still having to tell him not to, because we usually do not share sneak peeks before the mint. But yeah, he's really hyped. I'm happy to have him. I can't wait for the drop. It's going to take place on July 31st. So not the upcoming Friday, but the Friday after. And this is how we are going to close out July. And you mentioned it already. Then we'll have a little mint break, correct?
Yeah, we're going to take a little break. We're going to ride out August for the most part. We've got an anniversary coming up, so maybe we'll do something special for that. But ultimately, we have a rewards platform that needs to get launched. And there's another little secret project that I'm working on right now that has to do with storytelling. That we're not going to reveal just yet. So definitely want to get the rewards platform finalized. There's quite a bit of data work to be done with that. And hopefully have it launched. Ideally, if we can launch it on our anniversary, that would be fantastic, because that's going to open up a whole lot of doors in terms of what we create for our collectors. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, mints will be, I guess you would say, few and far between in the month of August.
Yeah, that would be cool. Absolutely. Why does anniversary sound like you and I have a romantic relationship?
It doesn't. It doesn't to me, man. You might want to talk to somebody about that.
All right, fellas. Great to have you here. Thanks for listening again, and definitely make sure to join us on Spaces on Friday. We should have the bonus drop by Maria ready by Friday, and I will get the diptychs out by the next weekend. I have seen some of you guys have already reached out. As you know, or as you heard in the beginning of the episode, I was quite busy this weekend, so I'll get them out by Sunday. Request anything you want. If there are any pieces you still need from the distro wallet, let me know. I'll get them to you. And that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing week. We look forward to see you guys on Friday. Keep out an eye out on Discord and X. We'll get the Alien promo started right now. And looking forward to Friday, everyone. And Jason, any final words?
No, I don't think so. Alex will have the announcement up with what's going on. And if you guys need anything, obviously reach out directly. And otherwise, we'll be knocking some work out behind the scenes. So have a fantastic week, guys, and we will talk soon.
Bye-bye, everyone.